Topic is why you should grow in a few vital areas as opposed to trying to grow in all areas of your life. So this comes from John Maxwell's book Leadershift. This is a textbook that we're going to be using over several of these video vlogs, podcasts, however you're listening to me today. But what John Maxwell says is that he studied successful people over the years. And what he did was try to determine, well, what is the common element that made them successful? And he boils it down into four different categories. And it's the real categories. So we're going to keep it real today. The first is the R is for relationships. What successful people have done is that they develop strong relationships because they understand that people go along with people that they get along with. And I think I've said this throughout, 100 some odd episodes of this podcast, broadcast, however you want to call it. But people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. I think it's a pretty well-known commodity. But the problem is that people do not take the time to study how to develop a strong relationship. For some people, it comes very easy. For some people, they're very gregarious, outgoing. They're able to develop that relationship and cultivate strong relationships with an assortment of people over time. For other people, it's much harder. It's harder for some people to make that sort of connection. They're much more introverted, much more able to talk to people on email, social media. Maybe they're more writers, less partiers, all that kind of stuff. And so it's harder for those people to develop and cultivate those strong relationships. But it's critical for everyone's success. Especially if you're trying to develop business at a law firm, to develop strong relationships. So that's R. The E is for equipping. So what Maxwell talks about is sort of his company, and that he looked around in his organization and thought, well, if I'm gone one day, if I get hit by a bus, if something happens to me. And he's not a young guy anymore, right? But and he looked, and this is, years ago, obviously, but he looked around and he thought to himself, if something were to happen to me, who would carry on with what I do? And so this is all about legacy and succession planning and figuring out who that next person is, or who is the next generation of people who are sort of looking down the line, and who could take over if something were to happen to leaders, or if the leaders decided to retire, or what have you. And this is especially true in law firms, because talking about strong relationships with people, it is a lot of times a one-on-one relationship, meaning that some partner has the priority or the strong relationship with a general counsel somewhere, or a business person at a company, and who is going to take over? How is that relationship going to continue if that partner leaves, if something happens to that partner, God forbid? And so in that respect, you want to think about getting younger people involved in that relationship building process. So the client is not only seeing a relationship with that partner, but also with some of the younger people along the lines who may be able to take that client over if necessary, if the partner retires, or what have you. So that's in one respect. The other respect is, who are you grooming for leadership in your firm going forward? So, any firm, no matter what size, certainly has, leadership in place, a firm leader, an executive committee, office leaders, and the like. Who do you have that could step up down the lines? Who are you grooming to be on that path later on? And you want to take, tons of, a variety of concerns, such as, diversity, client relationships, ability, legal knowledge, temperament, all those sorts of things, leadership ability, all of the sorts of things go into that. And so it's not just a very simple act of, well, this person's going to take over in this office. No, it's got to be a much more planned activity. And so when firm leaders look up and they can think to themselves, okay, we have a really great plan in place. The only way you're going to do that, though, is by equipping the younger people, the other people, to take over. So that's the E. A is for attitude. For anyone who sort of looks at this personal development space, attitude, having a positive attitude, it really is a very vital concern. And just think about it. Who would you rather work with? Somebody who is very negative, who has a downtrodden, a sad point of view, who's always skeptical of everything and everybody, or somebody who has a positive attitude, someone who goes through the day with humor, with looking on the bright side. So not someone who has a sort of Pollyannish attitude, but simply somebody who has a really great attitude. Not someone who's going to have someone walk all over them and just say, oh, everything's okay. That's not at all. But somebody who can stay positive even in the most dire circumstances. Someone who's not going to freak out if something bad goes wrong, bad happens, because let's face it, as an attorney, bad things happen, and so certainly having that positive attitude is key. So that's A. L is leadership. And this is, obviously one of the topics that we focus on in this broadcast. We talk about marketing, sales, and leadership for attorneys. And this is obviously the topic that Maxwell has devoted his life to. He says that everything rises and falls on leadership, and to me, it's very true. It's at least a third of the components that I talk about here, because you're not going to have a firm or an organization unless you're a strong leader, unless you're somebody who people willingly want to follow, whether that's clients want to follow you, whether it's your associates or your fellow partners, or your colleagues or support staff, however you want to look at it. Leadership is always a key factor and something that every attorney needs to focus on. So, obviously there's a lot of other things that when you think about sort of your life, there are lots of other things that you can focus on, and perhaps you do want to at least develop yourself in some other areas. Obviously, something like your physical fitness is very important. The two things that I mentioned, marketing and sales, very important for attorneys, in addition to this list. But the point I think that John Maxwell is trying to make is you don't want to get bogged down in trying to be perfect in every area, like every possible area of your life. And there's really only a few things that you need to focus on to make yourself extremely successful. He identifies these four. And what I would recommend to you is, and I think for everyone in every context, these few vital things that you focus on are going to be different depending on who you are, whether you have a family, what practice setting you're in, all of those things. But certainly I think we could all agree that at least these four, relationships, equipping, attitude, and leadership, are vital no matter who you are across every spectrum. And I think that's what he's getting at, is no matter who you are, no matter where you work, these things are of vital importance. And then you want to think about sort of what are the other, maybe 2 or 3 areas that for you personally in your practice area, in your state of life, what are those 2 or 3 areas that you want to add to this that you're going to focus on? Because, certainly marketing and sales, if you're, in a law firm and you want to develop business, maybe, parenting, but that goes into, I think, the relationship categories. Having a strong relationship with your kids and your spouse, I think, are just as important in that category as having, some other strong relationships. So something to think about. I would love to hear what you have to say. So please, if you're watching this on video, please comment and wherever you're looking at this video. If you're on the podcast, I'm at Attorney DSY on every single social media platform. Love to see your tweets, your Facebook comments, your Instagram comments, and the like. So if you need an attorney or need to refer a case, my phone number is 312-239-9722. And my email address is dscriven-young@peclaw.com. So remember, fight for the lifestyle that you want and become the rainmaker that you need to be.